Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taormina, blogger around the OAA. Host of Last Year Brain Cells, host between 2 minutes on Orion Television. Like welcome those watching on local voice on SoundCloud, those watching on Orion Television. A lot to talk about here this week here on the podcast. I know we've had some big changes. It's been about a month since I've seen everybody because we had the preview shows of football. But when you look at some of the storylines that, everything is really starting to come to fruition after the first 3 weeks of the season. There are a lot of things we got to talk about. I mean, obviously, I'm still really upset about Rex Walters exiting Waterford Kettering going exit stage right. He left there after being there for about 3 months, and then he goes to Colorado to coach college basketball. Benny Zarevsky, recently stepped down at Ferndale University. I just looked at Ferndale University's girls basketball page. Now there's some questions now with both Ferndale and Ferndale University. Obviously, I know one of the other headlines was Todd Negoshian being new AD at Stony Creek. I mentioned this on the blog at Saginaw4650 at blogspot.com prior to this. Well, I had some instant knowledge about it, but now he has to step down at North Farmington, focus on the athletic director's job at Stony Creek. And then, of course, so there's been a lot that's gone around the league here when you look at, and also I got a new website, OA, around the OA at Weebly. So I'll have a link on that on the blog, excuse me, at Saginaw4650 at blogspot.com. So a lot has gone on the past month. So a lot of exciting times. Of course, I'm still going to have the blog. I'm still, Of course, we have podcasts always, but a lot of exciting times going on around the league. Now let's go to some of our main stories. Obviously, football is the main story here. Obviously, considering what's been going on, everybody at the last 2 weeks, it's kind of some unexpected things, some expected things, some you really can't judge. When you look at a team like West Bloomfield, who sits at 2-0 right now after 237-0 blowout wins against Dearborn Fortune and A&T respectively, you really can't judge West Bloomfield the first 2 weeks of the year. You really can't judge them. Adams is also the same way. You kind of think about the 31-3 win last week against Rochester, and then and then, of course, a stunning blowout win against Romeo, where Adams just completely just dominated. So you kind of look at Adams and you say to yourself, okay, they might have found some things, they might have figured some things out, coming in the year. I knew there were some question marks with Adams, but it looks like early on they've answered some questions. I think the big story here is Lake Orion, because you look at this Dragon team and you think to yourself, you're seeing at 0-2, what's going on with this team? And I could tell you there's a lot going on with this Lake Orion team that needs to be addressed. The first thing you look at with Lake Orion, I think this is the main one here, is the injury bug. You kind of think about with Lake Orion, the injury bug, this was something that Coach Chris Bell addressed. Anthony Taormina, of course, the host of History Now, and also the host of the Lake Orion football preview show. Bell mentioned that injuries, they couldn't afford injuries because they're not a deep team. And you look at this team, and you look at the injuries to A.J. Catanacci, James Bambard, who got hurt in the game against Stony Creek, Jane Barrero, who got hurt against Stony Creek. So you really, and you have, of course, Drew McKay, who got hurt in the during that Stony Creek game as well. So you look at, there's some key injuries with this team. When you look at those injuries, but then also you got to look at the play of Anderson Adams. Adams has been a bright spot, scoring 3 of Lake Orion's first 4 touchdowns this year. Bambard, of course, having the other one. But there's been times that Adams has not looked very good. He looked right on the pocket. You watch that Stony Creek game, there were times he didn't make good decisions, which explains the interceptions. So you kind of think about, his development, and then you look at, of course, Brody Thompson having to play wide receiver to compensate the injury to Catanacci. And then, but you look at Lake Orion and you look at, they got about 60, 70 kids on the roster. So if you're Coach Chris Bell, why don't you use them? Use them, develop your depths, Use them and develop them. Even you look at what you've done in the past, like in 2007, I remember this real well when Chris Lum got hurt. Ryan Brock, he was a senior, played running back, played wide receiver, converted to quarterback, had a nice year. And then when Lum came back, he converted to play running back, and he had a really nice year. So there are some pieces in this roster that I feel like Bell has not been using, that he can use. And I think, there are some players on there that he can use. You look at this team and you say to yourself, how is this team 0-2 to start the year? You had a 1-point loss in Northville to start the year. I know a lot of people are going to have questioned Coach Bell, especially late in the game. Obviously when Bambard scored the touchdown, they missed the extra point. My personal thought, that was the right decision to go for 1. Then you recover the onside kick, had a chance to win it. This is where kind of a gray area comes into play, because you go for the field goal, go for the win. If he misses it, you're kind of second guessing yourself. You're kind of second guessing the question. And then, if you go for a Hail Mary, then you're going to put this on you, so, in the game against, and then, so Bell decided to go for the Hail Mary. I thought he made the right play call, right person trying to get the ball, giving it to your best athlete, Ryan Washlow. But unfortunately, it got picked off, and Lake Orion ended up losing that one 14-13. The Stony Creek game, you kind of think about this. Stony Creek was no doubt, I thought, the better team. They were tougher than Orion. They were better schematic-wise than Orion. Lake Orion's only touchdown, Lake Orion's touchdown in the first half came off a defensive touchdown by Max Nearing. But then Stony Creek went to a Wildcat and just basically out-topped Lake Orion. That's basically what it is. And that's been a problem for Lake Orion for the past couple of years now, where this team has relied on, it's had both, but, there's been times where this defense has not looked like a Lake Orion defense of the past. And we know when Lake Orion teams' defenses of the past was, especially under former defensive coordinator Dave Tooley. From, what he did defensively. We knew how good his defenses were. And then Rick Powell, obviously, when he came in 2019, he had a great 2019. And in 2023, I thought his defense was. I thought in 2022 his defense was very good. Well, 23, my bad. His defense was very good, I thought. But I think the mindset is they've got to get stronger mentally. And this is one thing that I've said about this team before the year started. I was worried about this team's mental psyche, and I was worried about this team's scheme. And it's come to fruition right now. It really has. Is this fixable? Absolutely, it's fixable. I think it is fixable. Because Bell can move some players around. He has a deep bench he can use. And I think that's the areas where he has to go. But then you look at the problem with the program, your JV's 0-2 right now, and your freshman's 1-1 right now. So, is there players he can call up from both programs? And right now, it doesn't look like it at the moment. So you're going to have to play with the players you have, especially when you look at your program right now. So that's the area where Bell's having problems at, is can you get this fixed quickly? Because you got Rochester coming up this week. Then you have the Red schedule starting up soon. Then you have to play Oak Park and then Saline to close out the year. And right now, when you look at it, what helps this Dragon team right now is the schedule's on your side. It's a tough schedule. But you have to win games. You got to win games. And right now, that's where this team's at right now. Because this team, they got a choice. They got a choice. It's either full tent or say, you know what? We're gonna rattle the saddle, make some noise, and we're gonna be fine. I have said this. With that schedule Lake Orion has, 4 wins will get you in the playoffs. 3-4 wins will get you in the playoffs with that schedule. So that's really where Lake Orion's issues are. They got injuries right now. You got to question what they're running right now on both sides of football. You got to question it. Is it the right fit? Is it the right fit? For both sides. Is it the right fit? That's a question that we don't know. The injuries have not helped things. But when you look at this team and you think about, we all know Coach Chris, but we know he's been 0-2 before. We know he's found ways to win games to get this team get this program in the playoffs. He's found ways. So I'm not questioning, you know what I mean? Can he do it? Because I think he can do it with this roster. But there's some things that have to change when you look at it. And you look at this roster, yes, it's filled with injuries. But he's had injuries before. He's changed some things up before in the past where they've managed to, he's got one of the most creative minds in the game. And I think for him, he's got to use it now. Because you think about it. I remember the years from 98 to 2012. I remember those playoff teams. There were some years he was very talented. There were also some years he wasn't very talented. The years he wasn't very talented, they were worksman-like teams. This is a similar worksman-like team. He managed to get this program in the playoffs because he did some things right. So, and do I think it could happen here? Absolutely. So I think this is going to fall on him. I really do. If he can get this right, like he did in 2007, I think that this team could surprise some people. I really do. But for this program, it starts week 3. They have to win against Rochester. They have to win. Because if not, I don't know if I see playoffs in this team's future. I really don't know. And that is really unfortunate. So that's something. If you're Lake Orion right now, you're sitting at 0-2, really tough spot. Your offense is struggling to stay on the field. Your defense at times has been giving up long drives. And you look at that Stony Creek game, you kind of think about in that game when you were down 22-20, if Adams doesn't fumble the ball, and Stony Creek doesn't recover it, do you think that team could could maybe go down the field and score? Maybe. But then the next play that led to a Stony Creek touchdown. So bottom line in those games, I thought the Northville game that could have went either way. I really thought in the Stony Creek game, I thought Stony Creek was a more tough team. And it showed. So a couple things has got to get cleaned up, obviously, for this Lake Orion team. First one, got to get stronger. You got to get stronger. Mentally, physically, everywhere above. You got to get stronger. 2, is the scheme right? Is the system right for this group? And now you add these injuries, you got to wonder. So, but is this fixable? Absolutely. But the question is the players and the coaches, they got to do it. They got to do it. Because no one's going to feel sorry for this team. No one is. So, they got to come in with that mindset of Lake Orion versus everybody. They got to come in with that. They do. I think they're going to be fine. But everything starts with this week for this team. It does. It really does. Another game that really had me impressed, surprised with, was Harper Woods and Clarkston. People asked me about this game, and they said, well, everybody, if you went with Clarkston, it was a safe pick. It clearly was a safe pick if you went Clarkston. But I got to give Coach Rod Oden and the Pioneers a lot of credit. Particularly one Nate Washlow. I have been a fan of this young man since he came over from Canada. His sophomore year. I have been a big fan of Nate Washlow. You look at, obviously, his sophomore year, he shared time with Stephon Buford. He shared time. And you look at the development that this young man has had, it has been beneficial for Coach Oden. Really beneficial. And for him to lead Harper Woods in his first 2 years starting, he had to miss at least almost 3 games because of an injury he suffered against Novi Detroit Catholic Central. And for him to overcome that and then lead the Pioneers to a deep playoff run like he did in Division IV until they got to Goodrich. Then you look at this year, a senior year. And talking to Coach Oden, I asked him how Nate was doing. He's doing great. What he did against Clarkston, people are going to give Dakota Grant a lot of credit, and yes, he does deserve a lot of credit. Don't get me wrong. He had a monster day against Clarkston. But to me, that game totally was on Nate Washlow. Because You look at that game against Clarkson. Clarkson was up 21-0. Well in control. Bowman twins were doing their thing. Alex Wachesco was playing well. And then Harper Woods gets a score. Then they recover an onside kick. They get another score. They scored 20 unanswered points. And then their defense held Clarkston to nothing in the second half. That's unheard of. Especially when you look at what Clarkston did against Belleville. Now, albeit Belleville this year, I don't think is very good. I'm not, obviously they got a young team. They got a new quarterback in there. They're virtually a young team. So you kind of think about it. Clarkston, what they did against Belleville at Wayne State was absolutely incredible. What they did. They dominated them. They just owned them. They controlled tempo. Alex Wachesco looked comfortable in the pocket in that game. The Bowman twins were being the Bowman twins in that game. Wendell Childs was becoming a star. Gabe Mansour was solid playing on defensive line. In that Belleville game, I kind of felt like that Coach Justin Pintar was just telling me, relax, we're fine defensively. Relax, we're fine. And I started to believe him until last week. Harper Woods is a really good team, don't get me wrong. But I also think that defense had a lot to do with that, too. Because you look at, obviously, they couldn't get to Nate Washlow, which allowed them to see the field. Especially your star player, Dakota Garant, who went off. And then, of course, his final touchdown was to Tyler Buford. That's Stepan's little brother. So you kind of think about what happened there. That game was more about Harper Woods coming back and then holding on against Clarkston. Clarkston had a chance to win the game. They were, I think, at the 3-yard line at one point. And their defense did just enough to shut them down. Their defense did just enough. So now, if you're Harper Woods, you're in a great spot. You're guaranteed playoffs. You beat Clarkston, you're in the playoffs. You're guaranteed that. You look at that rest of that schedule. Yes, Saline's on there. Stony Creek will be a tough one. Those are, I think, the two toughest games on Harper Woods' schedule. I really think that. And then you look at Clarkston. Oh, boy. Was I right about the defense? My biggest worry with this team was the defense. The defense came in, they were impressed. They were really impressive against Bell. Don't get me wrong, they were really impressive. But against Harper Woods, a high-octane offense, 27 points allowed. Gave a big game to Carol Garant. It's your second loss. It's your second straight loss to Harper Woods. I remember the 23 game where they were just shellacked on their home field. I think this one might be worse because this Clarkson team is a veteran team. You have the Twins, even though they played in that game in 23. when they were freshmen. Actually, when they were sophomores. They played in that game. You have a veteran offensive line. You have experience. And yet, this happens. This happens. Do I think Clarkson's going to bounce back? Absolutely, I think they're going to bounce back. I'm not. If I'm Coach Pintar, I'm not worried. I'm really not. But you got some things to fix, though. Your offensive line's got to be fixed a little bit. Defensive line, maybe. But your defense looks like they got to get fixed. And they got Oxford coming up. They got Oxford coming up, which is going to be really interesting. Oxford's been a team that I think right now has been treading on water. I really do. When you look at the Wildcats, Heartland was not as good as I thought they would have been. They didn't have a new coach. They didn't have a good running attack. Their rushing game, their ground game was not very good. But Oxford had trouble with Heartland in the first half. But Jack Hendricks, AJ Krupa, basically saved them in that game. And then they got going in that second half. I need to know. Then against Groves, Oxford, in the game against Groves, Oxford battled. They battled. I mean, they had a punt return for a touchdown. Oxford's been a team that I think's been treading water. Now, they're not Troy-like. Troy, that's another story. Because I really think Troy is really treading water. Oxford, we know with their quarterback, Jack Hendricks, and their top defensive line, and their top defensive star, AJ Krupa. I mean, Seth Tabor's been really good at running back for them. Seth Tabor's been good for this team. We're going to know a lot about him against Clarkston. We're going to know a lot about him. I've said my piece about Adams and West Bluefield. Really haven't been able, you can't judge those two teams yet. You really can't do that. So, that's my take on the red. The white, Stony Creek right now. I mean, we talked Harper Woods already. Stony Creek, when you look at this team, the Lake Orion game, all I need to know. You look at, of course, Rose Telegatis, what he did, basically playing the Sam Fogler role, which is the Wildcat offense that coach, that offensive coordinator, Mike Powell likes to do. I think it's here, Mike or Jay. I gotta remember it. I mean, but it's clear Coach Rick Powell's done magic over there. It is clear as day, and he's done a great job there. They got a quarterback. Defense is solid. I mean, they've done their job. Bottom line, they got a recipe for success over there. They do. They really do. So Stony Creek right now, them and Harper Woods, to me, look like the top dogs in this division. Rochester, you kind of want to flush that Adams game right out the window. You don't know with Rochester because against Frazier, they looked really good. Really good. 34-0. And then against Adams, 31-3. They lost that one. So I'll be curious to see what Rochester team shows up against Lake Orion. Now, albeit Lake Orion's an injury-depleted team right now. And this is the Falcon Frenzy game. We know how Rochester is in those games. They have struggled in those games. But this is an interesting game. It'll be really interesting to see how that one goes. Really interesting. Then Groves, obviously, they knocked off UD Jesuit 42-7. And then lost a tough one to Oxford, 24-21. I think they're fine. I think they're going to be fine. Coach Flaherty's team, they're going to be fine. There's a reason why I have them 10 in the polls this week. Despite, that tough loss to Oxford. They've been competitive. And I've been impressed with them. Despite the youth that this team has. And they got a lot of youth on that team. They do. They got a lot of youth on that team. Then there's A&T. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Lose 43-8 to 8. Last two games, 80-8. 80-8. I remember at media day when Coach McKenzie said that this team would be better. I don't know if I see progress with this team right now. I don't know if I see any progress with A&T. Considering they got crushed by East Kentwood and then crushed by West Bloomfield. I just don't know if I see progress. That's a problem area for A&T. Is progress. Because right now, with this team where they're at right now, they're in trouble. They're in big, big trouble. And they get to go to Stony Creek this week. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, Nelly. That spells trouble right there. Really does. So that's a trouble spot right there. Then let's look at the blue. I'm going to start with North Farmington. North right now, I like where they're at despite their 1-1. They knocked off Livonia Stevenson 20-6. 20-7. I really like Elijah Cobb at quarterback. He beat out Stone Trevino for the job. Cobb has really delivered for this North Farmington team. Allows Terrence James to move everywhere. He had a monster game against Wall Lake Western. He had a complete monster game against them. So when you look at North Farmington, this team, and they got the Farmington Cup this week. That's going to be really interesting. I like what Terrence James has done. Their defense has been a little shaky, especially against Western. Now, they did allow 3 touchdowns to Donovan Triplett, which is a big no-no. But, you got to like where North Farmington's at right now. Another team I like where they're at right now is Seaholm. Now, Coach Jim DeWald, obviously, coming into the year, you kind of think Seaholm's going to be down. You kind of think that. When I talked to Coach DeWald, on my call-ins, he mentioned that he didn't know what to expect with this team. He didn't know what to expect. Now, albeit, the 2 wins, Troy at this game, that was a good win for them. 31-28 on the road against a veteran-heavy team. That was a good win for them. And then, of course, knocking off Avondale. I think, to me, that, and for Coach DeWall, congratulations on his 100 career win at Seaholm. Congratulations. I also think that game had both more Seaholm too with the Veer, but I think that game also was more of Avondale's issues. We're going to talk about Avondale's issues in a couple minutes because that is a disaster in the making over there at Avondale with the way that team's been. You look at Seaholm the way that they've been. That team they just go along with their own business. They sit real pretty. They're in a great spot right now. I like where Seaholm's at. Then I got to talk Troy. I look at Troy and I say to myself, how in the world is this team 2-0? You look at this team, they lost everybody from last year. They lost everybody. You're bringing a new quarterback. You have a new running back. And you were projected to finish 0-9. 0-9. And here you are 2-0. You knock off a good Blooming Hills team, 17-13. Defense played well in that game. And Ferndale was 24-14 or 24-12. So 26 points allowed in 2 weeks. Credit the defensive coordinator, Tom Callahan. Did a really good job of that defense. So I'm surprised here Troy sitting at 2-0 right now. Treading water. I call Troy right now really treading water. When you look at, of course, with Troy, Oxford and Troy are pretty much the two teams I didn't expect to be 2-0. Now here they are, both 2-0. But I think Troy's really the one that's treading the most water. Oxford, they got a case. I don't know about Troy. But here they are. They're 2-0. See how that schedule plays out. I mean, they got to play Clarkston. Not going to be fun when they play them. Oak Park right now sits at 1-1. Terrible loss to Farmington. Terrible loss to them. Bounced back and just destroyed Berkeley. Berkeley's a complete mess right now. Talk about them in a minute. Bloomfield Hills sitting at 1-1. Rough loss to Troy. Blew out Royal Oak 42-7, and Coach Scott Merchant's first win. So, as coach of the Blackhawks. So, we'll see what Bloomfield Hills team shows up next week. We'll see what type of team they show up this week. Troy Athens, same situation. Tough loss to Seaholm. Bounced back against Pontiac, winning 44-16. I think that game was a little more competitive than thought. So, we're going to find out where Athens is at. I still got questions with them. And then there's Farmington. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. How do you lose to Holly? Albeit, yeah, Holly's got Billy Keenis, their head coach. Dave Tooley's their defensive coordinator. Still, you come off a good win against Oak Park in Night Valley, only to do this against a team that was blown out by Bay City Western? If you're Coach Jason Albrecht, you got to be just asking yourself these questions. What's going on? I mean, you have Pesci as your quarterback. You have Anthony Bailey, your all-around player. You got to give Holly credit for shutting those two guys down. No words to explain that. None. You can't explain it. So when you look at this division right now, I would say it is North Farmington and Seaholm right now. Troy, I don't trust right now. I can't trust Troy. Oak Park, they're more than capable of bouncing back. Athens still has some questions. Bloomfield Hills, we don't know. And then Farmington, I think they're the biggest question mark right now. We'll see what happens. And then let's look at the gold. This is a mess. This division's an absolute mess. If I had to say right now who the best team in that division is right now, it's Ferndale. Ferndale, by default, has to be the best team in this division. Because of, obviously they put points up. They've been competitive in games. They've been playing good football. But defensively, this team's been a problem. They struggled on both sides of the ball, actually. And albeit Ferndale's a pretty young team. They're a very young team. Now, their problems aren't the level of Avondale or Berkeley's. Royal Oak is like the mystery team here. Royal Oak, you might want to watch. If I'm Coach Colin Campbell, I would just say, you know what? I would take the team to your house and watch every Scooby-Doo show, because that's your team right now. That's Royal Oak right now. They're a Scooby-Doo team. I would have them watch every Scooby-Doo episode. I would have them do it. Because one week, you beat Lakeshore 17-7. And last week, you get blown out 42-7 by Bloomfield Hills. I mean, if I'm Colin Campbell, I'm just saying, you know what? I would just take your team to either Kiva or your house and watch every Scooby-Doo episode. That's what I would be. Because clearly, if you read the concept of Scooby-Doo, they like to go on mysteries. Royal Oak is a mystery team. So, we'll see. But Royal Oak clearly to me is a mystery team. They're not, Pontiac's competitive. Pontiac is extremely competitive. Yes, they had a good win against Pontiac A&T 20-6. And then they had a tough loss to Athens 44-16. But Coach Wendell Jefferson's team is scoring points. They're scoring points. They're going to be okay. Pontiac's going to be A-okay. I'm not worried about Pontiac right now. Really not. I'm not concerned about Ferndale. I think Ferndale's fine. I think Pontiac, they're going to be fine. Royal Oak, we don't know. But if I'm them, maybe get a subscription to MeTV, the Tunes part, and watch every Scooby-Doo episode. Even Scooby-Doo and Scrappy. Or even watch Boomerang. I mean, because that is Royal Oak right now. Now, teams that are in some big, big trouble. I'm going to start Berkeley first before I go Avondale. Coming into the year, I had high hopes for Berkeley. High hopes for this team. Coming into the year, you play Livonia Franklin week 1, and you get absolutely devoured. You get absolutely devoured. And then week 2, you play Oak Park, and you get devoured again. 32-0. You have allowed 66 points in 2 weeks. That's not winning football. If you're Coach Casey Humes, what are you going to do? How are you going to get this team turned around quickly? Because I've heard all year long with Berkeley. I've heard all year long we're going to be better this year. Stats haven't proved it. You got to get some things fixed if you're Coach Humes. You got to get some things fixed. And then there's Avondale. Oh, boy. 57 against Cedar Springs. 57. And then the following against CO, 44. 111 points allowed in 2 weeks. That is just mind-boggling. 111 points allowed in 2 weeks. How do you explain it? How in the world do you explain that? I mean, I get offensively you're trying to change systems. Going away from the wing T to more of the spread. Now, I don't know what the problem is offensively. Because the spread should help these athletes. They should help Avondale's athletes. If you're Coach Jim Carlisle. But your defense is your biggest problem right now. You've given up 111 points. That's not winning football. That is not winning football. Actually, I take that back. 101 points in 2 weeks. That's not good at all. I get that there's that transition period. And you look at what Ferndale, they're going through that transition period right now. And I get you're going through it. The problem is, when you look at Avondale, Avondale's had athletes. They got athletes on that roster. But in 2 weeks, 101 points allowed? In 2 weeks. That is 50.5 points allowed in 2 weeks. That's bad. That is not good football. When you're changing, I get you're changing schemes, but you have athletes. But 50.5 points a game in 2 weeks, that is a serious problem. And you look at this division that you're in. This division is still up for grabs. I mean, but your defense, last 2 weeks, when you look at the stats, it's been absolutely atrocious. Now, albeit Cedar Springs is a wing T team, and then Seaholm's a Vera team. So they've had to run against teams that run the option or the misdirection. So something tells me something's not right with your interior line. Something's not right. And then in the case that happens, if you commit the run, they burn you in the air. So when you look at, of course, this Avondale team, is their problems fixable? It could be. They could be fixable. When you look at the teams that are 0-2 in the league right now, I mean, Lake Orion right now is 0-2. I think their problems are fixable. They're just going through some injuries right now. And some concerns program-wise. You look at Avondale, they got a new coach in there. Ferndale, they got a new coach in there. I mean, A&T, I think, is in the worst shape of the 4 teams right now. Other than that, everybody else sitting at 1-1 right now. Or at 2-0. And then you look at, of course, the future members coming into this conference. Waterford Kettering and Waterford Mott. I mean, I'm going to start Kettering first. I'm saying to myself, oh boy. What is Kettering doing? What is Coach Brian Barnes doing? I mean, you gave up 55 to South Lyon. You gave up, I think, 46 to Walled Lake Central. Where's this defense? Where is this defense? Last year, you were the worst defense in the Lakes Valley. Looks like right now you're well on your way. You got to get that defense shored up if you're Coach Brian Barnes. You got to get that defense shored up. Because right now, that is the biggest problem right now at Waterford Kettering. It's their defense. Now, their offense really struggled against South Lyon. Their offense really struggled. I mean, only scoring 6 points. So they got to be on the field longer. They got to have more time on the field. Because if not, Kettering's going to be in for another long year before they head in the OA. They're going to be in for a really long year in the Lakes Valley in their final year. And then there's Waterford Mott. So when I look at Waterford Mott, Coach Trajan Say has done a really nice job. Sitting at 2-0 right now. Had a nice win against Walled Lake Northern, a blowout win. Then they got their revenge against a young Milford team, winning 28-27. So you kind of think about with Waterford Mott where they want to go. They're trending in the right direction. But bottom line is, for Waterford Mott, their defense has got to get shored up quickly. Because this team still has to play Walled Lake Western. They still got to play Pontiac Notre Dame Prep, which is going to be a really interesting matchup for them. But when you look at Waterford Mott right now in the Lakes Valley Conference, you kind of have them in a really good spot. You know, you're in a good spot. Because all you got to do is beat Walled Lake Western. You beat Walled Lake Western, I think you're going to win this league. Now, there's some trap games in there. South Lyon looks like it's going to be a trap game. To me, that game might be the only one. I don't know about Lakeland. I'm very suspicious about Lakeland. I've got some concerns, some questions. So when you look at Waterford, the Waterford schools right now, Kettering, I got some big time concerns at the first 2 weeks. And then Waterford Mott, I really don't have a lot of concerns. So when you look at week 3 teams I'm watching this week, I am watching Lake Orion extremely carefully. That Lake Orion Rochester game is going to be really interesting. Rochester, we know, has got a lot of experience. We know they got their line is solid. I think Lake Orion's line is also solid as well. It'll be interesting to see how Matt Dykey does against his defense. How does Lake Orion respond with injuries? With it's the scheme right? It's the mental psyche there. There's a lot of questions with Lake Orion right now. So that's a team I'm watching extremely carefully is Lake Orion. Because right now that team is loaded with injuries. I mean, and I got a lot of confidence in Coach Chris Bell. He can get this thing turned around quickly. How does Clarkson respond against Oxford? That's going to be a fun matchup over at Oxford. West Bloomfield, are they for real or not? Are they for real? Playing against an Adams team, we know it's loaded with experience, and Ryland Waters back. I know Tyler Keith will have his hands full. He'll have his hands full for sure at Civic Center TV. Farmington Cups this week. How does Farmington respond after that brutal loss to Holly? How do they respond? I mean, were they looking ahead? That seems likely. Were they looking ahead to that game against Farmington, against North Farmington, which is going to be at Falcon Field? You know, they really put themselves in a terrible spot. Is Troy for real? I don't know. Harper Woods and Groves is this week. I know Harper Woods will be motivated for Groves. How do they respond? How does Stony Creek respond after an emotional win at Lake Orion? Taking on A&T. How do they respond? We'll see. See how that goes. I mean, and then you look at a team like Troy Athens, how do they respond? How does Oak Park respond? And then you look at the Gold. How's that situation looking? There's so many questions heading into this week. So many questions. You know, you look at this division, even Pontiac's got a shot in the Gold. Pontiac's even got a chance. That says a lot. But right now, if I had to be a safe man's bet right now, I have to pick Ferndale. Really do. So we'll see what happens. See what happens. Other sports, obviously, you look at soccer. You know, you kind of think about, you know, Athens and Troy, both those teams. You know, and then, of course, in the white, you know, you got Groves in there, Seaholm's in the red. You know, soccer been going along good. You look at, you know, volleyball right now. Clarkson, to me, I still feel like is the best team. But keep an eye on Lake Orion. I think Lake Orion might be better than thought, which is something that I would be surprised heading in the year. So that's something to keep an eye on. I know Bloomfield Hills is always solid. I know they got a new coach in there. So right now, when I look at volleyball right now, I just think right now it's Clarkson, to me, is still the best team because of the experience that they have. But Lake Orion and Bloomfield Hills are not that far behind. We'll see what happens. I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at SaturdayFooty's50 at blogspot.com. Also, our new website around the OAA Weebly at Weebly.com. I will post the links on the blog at SaturdayFooty's50 at blogspot.com, where I'll have my projections up this week on the blog and also on the web, not on the blog, but also on the website. So we'll see what happens going forward. I'm going to sign off. Take care. God bless. And I will see you all next week anyway. Take care and God bless all.